AusBiz. We have another fantastic presentation to bring to you. This is Spectur. SP3 is a ticker code. It's an Australian-based developer of security, surveillance, and warning solutions powered by solar, the Internet of Things, camera, and cloud-based technology. So there's a lot in there, but basically the company owns the rights to its innovative hardware and disruptive cloud-based systems, which are deployed to provide solutions to industries that include government and includes utilities in the building, construction, and the civil sector. So Spectur's core products are solar-powered deterrence and surveillance systems and associated cloud-based platforms. These systems incorporate cameras, lighting, audible warnings, and a hardware IoT platform that is remotely accessed and connected via mobile technology to a cloud-based platform. The company achieved record sales of more than $600,000 in the month of February, so that signaled a very strong start to this 2021 calendar year. Again, if you're watching out there, it's great to have you along, but we would love to have some questions coming in from you. And to do so, you just have to go to the bottom of your screen and enter them into the Q&A session. I'm sorry we're running just a couple of minutes late, but we'll get things back on track ASAP. We've got Gerard Dyson, who's Managing Director of Spectur, joining us now live. Gerard, welcome.
Thank you, Nadine. I feel like there's nothing left to say. You've said it all so well.
Well, you keep going because you've got all the detail, and that, of course, is where the interest lies.
Well, thanks again, and good morning and good afternoon to everyone on the East Coast. It's an absolute pleasure and a privilege to talk to you today about Spectur and why I think you should be interested in our, unique position in a growth market. So note, we have our obligatory slide. I won't try and paraphrase that. You can read it at your leisure. Instead, let me just tell you a little bit about some of the ways that Spectur helps customers today. Now, we help customers improve the safety of their communities through smart warning and mustering systems that don't need people on site, they don't need power or wired internet. Now, these systems here have applications on beaches, bushland, but also on remote and large-scale construction sites. Through remote automated sensors, whether it's a tagged shark sensor or a smart drumline, for example, or via manual intervention, these systems can project visible and audible warnings, either in isolation or if you have multiple of them acting as a team, to let people know of hazards or a need to muster. And this warning is combined with camera vision, which allows the warners or the people operating the systems to see or record the response to the warnings or the muster. We also provide options to give true two-way communication, so VoIP phones with cameras and the like as well, and even smart and programmable digital signs too. We also improve the security of sites through helping stop crime before it starts without needing people on site, power, or wired internet. Now, this has applications for security companies, the building industry, remote utilities, government departments, a number of areas. The way the systems work is they detect people or vehicles that shouldn't be present, and then they're immediately and automatically warned with either a visual and spoken warnings to leave. They're told to get out of there and that they're being recorded. And they are actually being recorded, and either the customer or their monitoring service is being notified of the event in real time. So how does it actually work? Well, I want to give you an example here, a live example from a customer that had a problem with illegal dumping. So this is things being dumped in the bush. This was a government customer responsible for very large tracts of bushland, and this land was being abused by people. Wrongfully dumping, and it was, household rubbish, chemicals, construction waste, asbestos. They tried putting up signs and warning posters and the like, but that didn't work. People ignored that. They tried, and a few other people have tried this too. They've tried trail cameras. Unfortunately and ironically, these were stolen, so that didn't work either. They also tried an unnamed, I won't name them, they've got a name, a competitor to Spectur. But the false alarms from those systems were so great that they effectively couldn't use the systems for their intended purpose. And then they found Spectur, and we were easy to do business with. We were happy to trial and work with the customer to get the optimum solution. It was easy to install. We didn't need trucks or anything. And we used artificial intelligence to reduce false alarms from kangaroos or branches moving and all those other things. And it worked. And that customer now has more than 65 systems and continues to grow. And I'm going to give you an example here on a little bit of what it looks like. We have a variety of comedy reels that go on with our systems here. I'll just click, let me just click that. There we go. I'll make the video live. So this particular vehicle showed up on one of these sites, but fairly rapidly they were identified by the Spectur system. So they decided, I'm not going to dump, I'm going to leave. But as you can see, unfortunately, they got bogged. And so they have to start taking all the things that they were going to dump off the truck to be able to get out. But unfortunately, it was all getting a bit tricky. So they had to bring in a friend. So then they have to get the friend to help tow them out. And then they have to load all the rubbish back onto both of these trucks again before they leave. And this is just a few sort of shots from this video, but all of these events occurring under the watchful eye of Spectur and our customer. And this is kind of how it works, is the cameras or the systems identify people doing crime. Straight away, in the moment, it notifies them, you're not meant to be here, you're doing the wrong thing, and they stop. And they either leave, or if they get bogged, they eventually leave. But it's about stopping crime before it starts, not actually just providing a record of it. And I guess the last thing I wanted to add was the other solution around improving productivity. Spectur helps customers that don't have an opportunity to have their staff or their management teams in places all the time on multiple sites. And also they don't always have power or wide internet on every site too. And so their productivity applications have applications on construction sites, as I've shown an example here, but all sorts of other remote facilities or logistics areas and warehousing as well. These systems are quite useful for recording progress for a site, so determining how far it's moving so they can pay contractors, claims management, whether it's a safety issue or some other issue, you can go back through the events that have occurred. You can generally look at labour productivity and identify when people are on site and their activities, and also just things as simple as knowing when have my supplies arrived on site before I send a particular trade, for example. So, our customers are able to review recorded events, CCTV and live camera streams at any time without having to be on site. And again, we have optional add-ons that allow people to have two-way direct conversations or set up signboards. So you can imagine a smart signboard that says, delivery is over here, or, site closed, ring this number, any of those sorts of things. We can do that remotely as well. So there are many businesses and government entities that operate outdoors. I'm pointing outdoors, you can't see, but there's a lot of people that work out there, and they can't get or afford people to be outside all the time. And they don't have access to PowerPoints. They don't have access to Ethernet cables or Wi-Fi. They've just got the sun. Spectur helps these businesses and government entities with these solar systems uniquely capable of sensing through whether it's cameras or other sensors, thinking using edge or cloud-based AI, and acting, much as a person could, to help with safety, security, and productivity. Now, we will help with more things in the future, particularly with further advances in the Internet of Things and artificial intelligence. But there's a lot of growth that's going on outdoors. There's a lot more growth outdoors than indoors, in fact, and no one else is designing and building an integrated modular platform like ours. So if you think about phones as an analogy, and so some of the older people in the audience, this one might resonate. I remember when I got my first cordless phone at home, and I could go into my room to make a call instead of attached to the cable. Or even if you remember, you don't remember that, you remember the first mobile phone where you got your brick and you either stuck it in your bag, or if you had a big enough pocket, you stuck it in that. And that enabled you to go anywhere to make a phone call. And then also think about personal computers, when you're able to get away from the desk and the opportunity to bring your work and your computer with you anywhere you worked. Now, remember the first smartphone, bringing many of the benefits of a phone and a notebook computer together, anytime, anywhere. Software and hardware designed together to transform life as we know it. Well, Spectur is that smartphone. There is nothing like it. So there's a very large addressable market outdoors for autonomous sensing, thinking, acting applications. So we have to stay focused. So we are providing outdoor applications for customers in government and utilities, building and construction, based in Australia and New Zealand, that need solutions in safety, security, and productivity. Now we're being focused so that we can be successful soon, or we're successful now, more successful soon, but really it's to move to market dominance. We want to do that first in these areas before we move on to other things. And many of you that might know me, I'm often saying things like, he who chases two rabbits catches neither, which I think Confucius did before me, or, foxes pursue many ends at the same time. They see all the world in all its complexity. They're scattered and diffuse. So at Spectur, we're trying, and we are being very focused and disciplined to resist the allure of shiny objects. Because who doesn't like shiny objects? So I wanted to show you a little bit about how the sausage is made, about how our technology works. And I'll start by just saying, no one else has the technology backbone for solar-powered solutions that we have. We design and build integrated hardware and software platforms to provide outdoor solutions optimized for power and data. And this is the tricky bit. Power from the sun is quite limited. There's only so much solar panels that you can stick out there. And it's also worth noting that whilst you have unlimited data often in your building or in your home, but data from mobile networks, particularly when you're streaming vision, can be very expensive. So limited power, expensive data. Now, if you've got unlimited power, you can do lots of processing right on the edge. And so, for example, I don't have to send images. I just need to send the name of the person I've recognized or their license plate. But you need a lot of power to do that, which is difficult when you're just running on the sun. But if you've got unlimited data, for example, then you don't actually need to spend a lot of power energy. You just stream every bit of image. You don't have to do anything clever other than send images directly to the cloud. But the situation that we have outdoors and our customers have is not very much power because it comes out of the sun, and expensive data that comes through a mobile system. And we work and we have optimized solutions that manage that data cost and manage the power that's available. And, this is hard to do. And that's why we're relatively unique, or we're totally unique in this space. And it's a reasonable barrier to entry for it as well. Now, there are other people that operate in the solar camera space, for example. Most of the people that we see in this market, they take either, they'll take a third-party camera system from a product company, and they'll incorporate them into a structural or mechanical housing, buy a camera and stick it on a pole. They'll use the bundled applications that come with them, and they don't have any ability to change what's written on the box that it came in. So if you think about your old Nokia 6110, to use the phone analogy again, it made calls and it sent texts, but you couldn't add any other applications to it, and you couldn't change how it worked. That's what it did. That was on the box. That was it. Whereas we have the smartphone. And similarly, if you look at the big product companies, which are predominantly Chinese, with some Europeans as well, these combined solutions, they don't have open programmable camera and sensing platform. There just isn't one that's provided by those companies. And certainly there's not one that's provided that's optimized for low data cost and low power consumption. And it's probably also worth noting in this day and age as well, is that no one that doesn't control their entire ecosystem can guarantee where your data is being stored and how it's being used. Whereas at Spectur, we're uniquely able to control from the very start of the sensing all the way to the user. We have full control of that ecosystem, and we make sure that our data is exactly where you want it and nowhere else. I think just to add to this before I leave this slide is, there are other also quite clever software companies, particularly those in the smart city or the AI space. But again, they're quite limited to work with off-the-shelf camera systems to support their software solutions. And again, you just come back to the problem of power consumption, data consumption. They're hamstrung by that as well. So at the moment, we're pretty confident that we have a unique offering, and it's quite difficult to replicate in a growing market. And grow we have, as this chart so beautifully illustrates here. This chart here, there's a bit of information in it, so I'll break it down a little bit. What we're showing here is the 4 revenue streams that occur within Spectur. From our hardware sales, which is when we sell physical kit. We also rent the systems as well. There's a recurring revenue or a SaaS or a subscription stream, which goes whenever we sell something, it comes with a subscription, which is recurring revenue, and we have field services. So we have teams around Australia and in New Zealand that can install, relocate, service and maintain systems for customers as well. So you can see pretty good growth, pretty happy around that. And then we had this small matter called COVID-19, which had a real impact on our business. We had, pretty substantial exposure to sectors that were impacted by it and geographies as well. And what we were seeing, and this is really just showing the half H2 of FY20, but really what happened from around the end of Q3 FY20, so sort of this time last year, through to really December of 2020, we saw reduced demand in building. So the residential building market dropped off quite substantially, particularly in Victoria, because it had such long lockdowns that really was quite a notable impact. We also saw, particularly early on, cash preservation by some customers that really just moved to, I don't want to buy any new things. I'm going to just, preserve my cash as much as I can. And interestingly, lower crime. When people are locked down and they're curfewed, they're not out there stealing things to the same extent. And so all of those things led to this sort of impact at the in H2 FY20 and H1 of FY21. But all of these drivers that I just described then are now changing, and they're changing for the good. I think before I leave the slide, I just want to add a couple of other interesting things on this on the right-hand side of the slide. So it's worth noting that the parts of the business that had the, most resilient performance in COVID were our highest gross margin percentage parts, which is our subscription or recurring revenue and our rentals. These held up really well. And they're also the majority of our business at, just close to 60% of the business. And it's also worth noting, probably worth adding, is that this gross margin percentage here, we expect to be increasing because we had a new product, the Star 6 came out this financial year, and it takes time for us to ramp that up. So we are expecting to see improved gross margin percentage as we get better at building those things as well. Growth's back. It looks like we've seen the worst of COVID, as you can see December, January, February, and what we're expecting to see in March. We have had the best January that we've ever had. We then followed it by the best February we'd ever had, and we're expecting and we're forecasting the best March that we've ever had as well. So naturally, that will give us the best quarter 3 that we've ever had. And to put it in perspective, it's more than 40% up on what we did in FY21 Q2. So our last quarter, it's more than 40% up on that. If you look at some of the metrics, our average or annual recurring revenue run rate and our rental run rate is combined is more than $3 million a year now, of which is made up of 1.2 million a year and growing of ARR, and rentals at the moment of 1.8 million a year and growing too. We've got a really strong sales pipeline. It just keeps getting stronger and stronger. Even as we're converting sales, that you can see here, our pipeline's never been stronger. 2.2 million of cash at the end of Q2. So rather than just read out a list, which is never exciting for people, what are the takeaways from this? Spectur has a unique and valuable offering in a growing market. We've been through a tough calendar year 2020. We've navigated COVID, and we are absolutely back at growth right now. Now, no presentation is complete without the capital structure slide. It's worth just a couple of things of note, although it's all very exciting. We don't have any options outstanding at the moment, so pretty clean business. The options that did exist before all expired last year. The performance rights that we have on issue here are entirely the leadership team of Spectur, and these are subjected to published performance hurdles, which I think everyone who's a shareholder in Spectur would be ecstatic when they are met and exceeded. You know, our top shareholders, I'm very, very grateful to this group of shareholders. We've got tremendous stability and support from our major shareholders, which is great. Most of the sales volume that we have, and we have some reasonable liquidity. It's certainly improved. That's coming out of the sort of smaller retail part of the market. So at present, we don't have any notable or noticed, or we're not aware of any substantial overhangs in the stock. So we're in pretty good shape. And something else that I would like to just point out as well, although I'm sure a lot of you can do this math too, is that at the moment, our current multiple on annual recurring revenue, so if you just take out that 1.2 million, is only 6.4. And when you consider that's ignoring the rental business, which is very high gross, 75% gross margin rental business, and the sales business and the hardware sales, so another 73% of the business, we've still got only an ARR multiple from a market cap point of view of 6.4. And, you know, this just can't continue. I think, you know, the success that we're seeing and the growth that we're having right now, I think it's a very exciting time to be in Spectur. And on that note, I would like to take easy questions. Nadine, got a list of easy questions for me?
I'm sure they'll all be easy for you. Let's get going then. There's quite a few that have come in saying, hello, what are the plans for international expansion, particularly in the United States?
So, you know, as I mentioned before, we're trying not to be distracted. You know, in spite of ourselves, we have sold systems into Norway, Indonesia, Africa, the Middle East. You know, I've got an inquiry at the moment in India. So it's about where we are pushing our efforts at the moment. And having lived and worked, you know, quite a long time in the United States and in Canada and in Asia as well, I understand that it's not a small matter to go overseas. And for us, where we are at the moment, I think it is in the best interest of our shareholders for us not to be distracted and spread ourselves too thinly. You know, we do want to move to being positive cash flow consistently soon. If we go and try and open up another front in the US settlement, then that will just kick that can much further down the road. And I think our very patient shareholders would like us to, you know, just demonstrate, you know, a narrower path that allows us to get to, you know, a good position sooner. I mean, it's a bit of a balance. Certainly, I think there's a lot of opportunity because I don't see the product there. We get a lot of interest coming inbound from that part of the world as well. But, you know, we've got to be focused.
Well, then another investor in the company asks, who would you say are your biggest competitors, even though we know that you've talked about the moat, and how Spectur is currently placed to win more contracts?
Yeah, so, you know, the trite answer is we don't have any competitors because we're quite unique. But if you look at people that provide security, which is a big part of our business now, those competitors, you know, that's becoming, you know, it's limited what they can do. The architecture that they have can only do security, whereas we've got a platform that we can add more and more application in and out of, both from a software and a hardware point of view. So I just see us creating more space there. And I think the other thing is our platform is uniquely modular, both, again, software and hardware, to be able to move into other spaces. So we're seeing really good growth in the safety space with warnings and mustering systems, and also applications in productivity. So those security type companies, you know, will continue to operate in that space, but we're, you know, the Venn diagrams, we'll start, the bubble for Spectur will get bigger over here. And so that's probably what we would, that's what I think about competitors in that space. There's room for them, but it's, I'm sure people are buying flip phones still as well. You can still buy flip phones, but.
Right. This one is about equity. So do you need to raise any equity to achieve these growth aspirations that you speak of?
Well, this is, again, it comes down to, focus. Is if we wanted to, let's try and get into the US as well, and let's try and move into mining and oil and gas, then all of these things require a lot more investment. And so we've deliberately tried to keep our focus narrow because we really, I definitely want to respect the equity of the shareholders that we have in the organization at the moment. So, if you'd asked me, 15 months ago, I nearly blurted out, we'll be cash flow positive by this date. And then COVID came along, which was a little bit of a surprise for us. And it absolutely impacted us. And it's made me much more circumspect about oversharing that magical date. But at this particular point in time, from a working capital point of view, we don't plan to raise. But what I would add, and this is not anything new, it's something I've spoken of before, is we do continue to look for the right sort of acquisitions that would accelerate our growth in sensing, thinking, and acting outdoors. And we continue to look. We have looked at a lot, and we continue to look at them. And obviously, if we found something that we felt would be very helpful in accelerating that journey for us, then we would probably come to the market for some support on that.
Jared, what revenue do you need to be EBITDA break even?
Well, I think from a run rate point of view, it's probably somewhere in the $8 million per year run rate space. I mean, again, that number's kind of got a lot of plus or minus on it. If we wanted to, we can be cash flow positive tomorrow. We could, but it would mean we would take the growth out of the organization. And this is a balance. Again, I mentioned before, we could go into America, we could do it in other sectors, and we could grow faster the top line, but that would be at a risk of, that will just consume more cash. The other end of the spectrum is we could say, let's just pause growth and let's just, get rid of half the sales team, pull back on R&D, not open any new other space. Let's not spend any time looking for acquisitions with advisors. You could do all of that, which is what we demonstrated this time last year. We went and cut back the organization and we had a positive cash flow Q4. So we know how to do it. It's about the money that we're deploying for growth. It's a balance. And at the moment, we are trying to get that balance right because we want to grow at a rate that, deserves the excitement that Spectur should have, but we don't want to grow at a rate that means that we just burn through cash like Topsy and we're not looking after our shareholders. So we're trying to get the Goldilocks cash flow.
Well, this is more of a technical question that's come in saying, how remote can the system work? And you'll have to forgive me here. This person writes, I noticed that LoRaWAN can transmit between 15 to 20 kilometers.
Yeah, so if you're, so specifically on LoRaWAN, it can, but you need to have very good line of sight for it to work like that. LoRaWAN can also work only over 1 kilometer, depending on how it's set up. So we look at a variety of different communication technologies to bring in other sensors, whether it's LoRaWAN, whether it's NB-IoT, it could be Bluetooth. We also are able to and have designed our own specific radio frequency technology for it. So that's bringing in sensors. If you look at the main platforms in the field, almost always we're just running on the 3G, 4G network because they're up high and because we configure the antennas appropriately, we're able to get enough signal to operate when you can't use a phone. But also, again, I come back to is we optimize our system to use very small amounts of data, which means when the coverage isn't good, our systems still work well. Again, it comes down to because we've designed it, it works better. So, and if we're pushed, we can also use satellite modems as well if we need to. And again, our data optimization is really important to keep those costs down, but we can do that too.
And just another question on the geography. I believe you've got a joint venture with a New Zealand partner.
Right.
Can you just comment on how that's going so far, please?
Yeah, I mean, it's been, so Deus Ex has been our partner in New Zealand. We've got systems deployed there at the moment. They work. It's always very exciting. You know, we've had some challenges around shipping. You know, I think the world is seeing that supply chains are getting more challenged. So, you know, we've been, I guess, experimenting with how we stock that business properly to keep up with demand. But, you know, we're really pleased with our partner there. He's exactly the right sort of person. He's very well connected, and he's got really good access into very senior government, utility and construction companies. And a lot of those companies are, you know, we're well advanced in conversation. So we're really looking forward to how we can expand in that market as well.
I'm trying to squeeze in as much as possible, just because
Yeah,
we have a couple minutes at the top. So last question, what is your revenue aspiration? What are your revenue aspirations for the next 2 to 3 years?
So we've said we want to be at $20 million by 2023. So that's our stated goal, and I believe it's absolutely achievable. You know, that obviously there's a long way between where we finished last financial year at 4.8 and 20, but you know, the rate at which we're growing now, the traction I think that we've got with the technology platforms that we have at the moment, and you know, maybe there's an acquisition along the way that helps accelerate some of these things too. But you know, I think, you know, it's doable organically as well. So yeah, it's exciting. You know, it's 20 million, and then how do we get to 50, and how do we get to 100? And obviously they'll have stories that do have more geographical and sector expansion as well. But we've got something that's quite special here. And, you know, we're right on the cusp of it. And probably, like, I don't know, I haven't listened to all of the other investor shows, but we're horribly undervalued at the moment. So it's just the perfect time to be in Spectur at the moment. And I'm really excited about the future.
Well, we'll leave it on that positive note, shall we? Thank you so much for doing that. Thanks for the presentation. Fantastic stuff. Jared Dyson, Managing Director of Spectur.